The world knew Sheikh Zahir al-Mansur as a man who never forgave mistakes. He ruled his oil empire from the glittering heart of Dubai, where his word was law and his name meant perfection. To him, emotions were liabilities, distractions for men too weak to lead. But all that changed the day he crossed paths with her, a broke American woman with nothing to lose and fire in her eyes. Her name was Emily Carter. She had flown across the ocean chasing a dream and ended up scrubbing marble floors in Zahir's penthouse just to survive. But fate had a strange sense of humor, because the night she spilled tea on the most powerful man in the Emirates was the night everything began to unravel. Zahir fired her on the spot, humiliated her in front of his staff, and walked away without a second thought. To him it was just another ordinary day. But what he didn't know was that this woman he'd just dismissed was about to change everything he believed about loyalty, love and destiny itself. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications, because this story will remind you that sometimes losing everything is what makes us truly rich. The fire between them began with pride, burned through arrogance, and ended in something far deeper than either of them could have imagined. Stay until the end, because what Emily did next didn't just save her life. It saved his soul. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, revealing the 79th floor of Al-Mansur Holdings, a place few dared to enter and none dared to displease. The air was sharp, with the scent of expensive cologne and authority. Employees spoke in hushed tones, moving quickly and precisely, like soldiers in a silent army. Emily Carter clutched the tray in her trembling hands, her heart pounding with the rhythm of her steps. The porcelain teapot rattled against the cup, threatening to betray her nerves. She had been working here for only 3 weeks, long enough to learn that one mistake could end everything. Room 3. Don't speak unless spoken to, the supervisor had warned. And whatever you do, don't look directly at him. Him, Sheikh Zahir al-Mansur, billionaire CEO, ruler of boardrooms, and living legend of Dubai's skyline. The tabloids called him the Falcon, a man with eyes that saw everything and a heart that felt nothing. Emily pushed open the glass door and stepped inside the massive office. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Arabian Gulf, sunlight gleaming off the water like shards of glass. At the far end of the room, behind a massive oak desk, sat the Sheikh himself. He didn't look up. "Not yet. Your tea," Emily whispered, setting the tray down on a sleek marble table beside him. Her hands shook as she poured it. It was supposed to be simple, quick, quiet, but as she turned to leave, her foot caught on the edge of the carpet. The cup slipped. Time slowed. Hot tea splashed across the Sheikh's paperwork and onto his pristine white shirt. Emily froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir, I didn't mean—" He stood. Slowly, the room went cold. Zahir's dark eyes rose to meet hers, and for a moment she understood why people said he could silence a room with a single glance. His expression was unreadable, carved from marble and ice. He looked down at the mess, then back at her trembling hands. "Your name?" he asked. His voice was low, controlled, too calm to be safe. Emily Carter. Miss Carter." He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and dabbed his shirt with precision. "You had one task. One." She swallowed hard. "Please, sir, I'll clean it. You're done here." His tone was final, her chest tightened. "Sir, please. I can't lose this job. I'll do anything. Security will escort you out." And just like that, he turned away. The humiliation burned hotter than the tea. She watched as he sat back down, already ignoring her, already moving on, as if she were nothing more than a speck of dust in his perfect world. 2 guards appeared within seconds, their polite professionalism cutting deeper than cruelty. "This way, ma'am." She tried to explain, to beg, but her words fell into silence. Her badge was taken, her access card was cut. Within 5 minutes, she was standing outside the glass doors of Al-Mansur Holdings, staring at her reflection, tear-streaked, defeated, invisible. The Dubai heat hit her like a wall. Her shoes clicked on the marble steps as she descended into the noise of the street below. The city that had once looked like a promise now looked like punishment. She found herself sitting on a park bench across from the tower, clutching her purse, the only thing she had left. Her phone buzzed. A message from her landlord, rent overdue, final notice. Her eyes filled with tears. "What am I supposed to do now?" she whispered to no one. But fate wasn't done with Emily Carter. Not yet. 3 days later, Zahir al-Mansour was at a charity gala, another night of champagne, contracts, and shallow praise. His smile was the kind that could close a deal and end a war, but inside, he felt nothing. He was surrounded by people, yet completely alone. That's when he saw her again. At first, he didn't recognize her. The woman standing near the exit, dressed in a borrowed waiter's uniform, carrying a tray of drinks. But when their eyes met, something in him faltered. Her face, her eyes. The same woman who had ruined his morning. Emily froze, nearly dropping the tray. He blinked, certain he was imagining things. "You?" She set the tray down and turned to leave, but he moved faster, blocking her path. "What are you doing here?" he demanded. "Working," she replied, her voice steady but laced with defiance. "Some of us don't have the luxury of throwing people away, Sheikh al-Mansour." The way she said his name, sharp, fearless, stirred something in him. No one spoke to him like that. Not his employees, not his partners. No one, he frowned. "Do you enjoy humiliating yourself? You were fired from one of the most prestigious companies in the country, and now you serve drinks." Her jaw tightened. "I enjoy surviving." For a moment, silence hung between them, raw, electric. He had met women who worshipped him, feared him, used him. But this woman, she stood her ground. "You should learn to control that temper," he said finally. "You should learn to control your ego." He exhaled sharply, half annoyance, half amusement. "You're bold, Miss Carter, but that won't get you far here." "Maybe not," she said, "but at least I'll be able to sleep at night." He was about to respond when a commotion erupted near the main hall. A glass shattered, followed by a shout. Emily turned instinctively. A waiter had tripped, and the flaming centerpiece on one of the tables had caught the edge of a curtain. Fire. Within seconds, panic spread. Guests screamed. The flames grew. Without thinking, Emily ran toward it. "Wait!" Zahir shouted, but she ignored him. She grabbed a tablecloth, soaked it in water, and began beating the flames. Smoke filled the air, but she didn't stop until the fire was out. When the chaos subsided, the crowd erupted in applause. She stood there coughing, her hair messy, her hands blackened with soot. Zahir stared at her, stunned. The same woman he'd fired had just saved his event, for the first time in his life. Sheikh Zahir al-Mansour, the man who thought he'd seen everything, found himself speechless, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he couldn't look away. The next morning, Sheikh Zahir al-Mansour couldn't focus. Not on the reports stacked across his desk, not on the deals worth billions waiting for his approval, not even on the endless stream of messages from board members demanding his attention. His mind kept replaying one image, Emily Carter standing amid the smoke and chaos, coughing but unbroken, her eyes blazing with courage. He had seen people risk their lives for wealth, power and pride, but never for strangers. She hadn't thought twice before running into danger. She had done it without cameras, without applause, without any guarantee that someone would notice. And somehow she'd done it right after he had thrown her away like she was nothing. Zahir leaned back in his leather chair, fingers steepled under his chin. The city glittered beneath him, a kingdom of steel and glass. Yet for the first time in years, it all felt hollow. He picked up his phone. "Find out where Emily Carter lives," he told his assistant. There was a pause on the line. "Sir, the same Emily Carter who was—" "Yes," Zahir interrupted sharply. "Now." Hours later, he stood in front of a crumbling apartment building in the poorer part of Dubai, an area he had only ever driven past with tinted windows. Children played barefoot in the alley. A vendor shouted over the noise of traffic. The contrast was brutal. His black Rolls-Royce looked like a spaceship that had landed in another world. He climbed the narrow stairs until he reached a door with peeling paint and the faint smell of detergent. He hesitated before knocking. When Emily opened the door, her surprise was instant and genuine. "Sheikh Al-Mansour," she said, half in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" He noticed the faint circles under her eyes, the modest clothes, the fan humming weakly in the corner. This woman lived with almost nothing, and yet she carried herself with quiet dignity. "I came to thank you," he said simply. "You already fired me," she replied. "Wasn't that enough?" He almost smiled. "You saved hundreds of people last night. You didn't have to. You could have walked away. I didn't do it for you, I know." He studied her face, the stubborn lift of her chin. "Which is why it matters." Silence lingered. The tension between them wasn't hostile anymore. It was something heavier, unspoken. "I'd like to offer you a new position," Zahir said finally, "at my charity foundation. You'll have better pay, safer hours, and an apartment closer to the city center." Emily crossed her arms. "And if I refuse?" He raised an eyebrow. "Then you'll be turning down a life-changing opportunity." She shook her head. "You don't get it, do you? I don't want your pity. I don't need a reward to prove my worth." Her words hit harder than he expected. He had built an empire buying people's loyalty. No one had ever refused him. No one had ever challenged him like this. Zahir took a breath. "You misunderstand me, Miss Carter. This isn't charity. I'm not offering you money because I feel guilty. I'm offering you a chance because I saw something in you most people don't have anymore." "And what's that?" she asked. "Courage," he said softly. "Integrity, fire." For a moment her defenses cracked. She looked away, unsure how to respond. He continued, his voice lower now. "You risked your life without thinking twice. That kind of strength doesn't belong in the shadows. I could use someone like you in my foundation. Someone who understands struggle, not just business." Emily's heart pounded. She wanted to believe him, but part of her feared it was just another game of power. "And if I mess up again?" she asked quietly. "Then I'll fire you again," he said with a faint smile. "But at least this time you'll have a story worth telling." She laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. It startled both of them. "All right," she said finally. "I'll take the job. But I'm not wearing heels or saying yes, sir, every 5 minutes. I'll survive," he replied. As he left the apartment, something shifted in him. For years, Zahir had believed control was the key to success. Control over people, over emotions, over life itself. But Emily Carter had managed to challenge all of that simply by existing. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed often. Emily threw herself into her work at the foundation, organizing relief efforts, managing volunteers, and transforming dusty offices into real operations. She worked harder than anyone he'd ever hired, and not for recognition, but because she genuinely cared. Zahir found himself drawn to her office more often than necessary, asking about reports he could have easily read himself. Sometimes they argued about priorities. He saw numbers, she saw faces. Sometimes they laughed about things he never thought he'd find funny again. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, he stood in the doorway of her office, watching her finish paperwork by the dim light of a desk lamp. "You never stop, do you?" he asked. She looked up, smiling faintly. "Neither do you." "Touché," he said. He stepped closer, resting his hand on the back of her chair. "You've done more for this foundation in a month than some people have in years. You've reminded me why I started it in the first place." Emily met his gaze. "And why did you?" He hesitated. "Because I once saw someone die in my arms, someone who believed money could save everything. It couldn't." Her expression softened. "I'm sorry," he nodded slowly. "Don't be. It taught me that power means nothing if you don't use it to lift others. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that. The silence that followed was heavy with truth." Emily spoke gently. "Then maybe you just needed a reminder." Their eyes locked for a long moment, long enough for something unspoken to pass between them. Something neither could name yet, but both could feel. For the first time, Zahir felt his carefully built walls begin to crack, and though he didn't know it yet, the woman he had once fired in anger was about to become the one person who would redefine his entire existence. The rumors began as whispers, the kind that crawled through corridors and slipped beneath polished doors. By the end of the week, they became headlines. Billionaire Sheikh and his American employee, more than business. Zahir sat at the head of the long boardroom table, his executive shifting uncomfortably under the heavy silence. The newspaper lay open before him, the photo grainy but undeniable. Emily, smiling beside him at a charity event, her hand resting briefly on his arm as they spoke. A harmless moment, captured at the wrong angle. Turned into scandal, he could hear his father's voice echoing in his head. Power commands distance. Zahir, never let the world think you've fallen for a commoner. He closed the paper with a sharp snap.
Who leaked this?
No one answered. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioning. Across the city, Emily Carter was living her own nightmare. She'd arrived at the foundation that morning, only to find whispers and stares following her like shadows. People stopped talking when she entered the room. Her phone buzzed non-stop with notifications, messages, comments, and cruel jokes from strangers who knew nothing about her. She wanted to scream, to tell them all that nothing had happened, that she and Zahir had done nothing wrong. But words wouldn't matter. They never did. By noon, she was called into Zahir's private office. The air was thick with tension. He stood by the window, staring at the skyline, his jaw set tight. "Sit down," he said. Emily hesitated. "If this is about the photos..." "It is." He turned, his gaze sharp. "The board is furious. Investors are pulling inquiries. My name is trending for all the wrong reasons." She swallowed. "I didn't do anything wrong." "I know," he said quickly. Then softer. "But they don't. So what happens now?" He hesitated. For the first time, she saw something in his expression she'd never seen before. Uncertainty. "You'll have to step down," he said finally. Temporarily, her heart dropped. "You're firing me again?" "It's not firing," he said, avoiding her eyes. "It's damage control. Just for a few weeks, until this dies down." She stood up, shaking her head in disbelief. "Unbelievable. I risked my life for your stupid gala, worked day and night for this foundation, and now I'm the problem." "Emily..." "No, don't Emily me. You care more about your image than about people." He flinched, but said nothing. Her voice cracked. "You think hiding me will make you respectable? You think pretending I don't exist will make them love you more?" He exhaled slowly. "This isn't about love." "Exactly," she said bitterly. "It never is." And with that, she walked out. Zahir didn't stop her. Couldn't, because for once he wasn't sure he was right. That night he couldn't sleep. He sat on his balcony, the city lights flickering below, and thought about her words. "You think pretending I don't exist will make them love you more?" It echoed in his mind like a curse. He'd spent his whole life guarding his reputation, his empire, his bloodline. But for what? For empty praise from men who would turn on him the moment he slipped? For shallow loyalty bought with fear and money? He'd seen empires fall over lesser scandals. He'd built his identity on perfection, and Emily's presence had shattered it. But as he replayed her voice, her defiance, her compassion, he realized something terrifying. He didn't want perfection anymore. He wanted her. The next morning, Zahir made a decision that would send shockwaves through his world. He walked into the foundation unannounced, straight past the murmuring staff and into the main press room where reporters were already gathered for an unrelated event. Cameras turned instantly as he took the podium. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice calm but firm, "there has been much speculation about a photograph involving me and one of my employees." The room buzzed with tension. "I will not hide from it," he continued. "The woman in that photo, Emily Carter, has worked tirelessly for this foundation. She is not only one of the bravest people I've met, but also one of the few who have ever reminded me what true integrity looks like." Whispers filled the room. "She risked her life to protect others," he said. "She stood up to me when no one else dared. And if that makes her a target of gossip, then so be it. But I will not allow her name to be disrespected because of mine." Reporters erupted with questions, flashes firing from all directions. Zahir raised a hand, silencing them. "If the world wants to paint her as something she's not," he said, his tone hardening, "then they'll have to go through me first." The moment the conference ended, social media exploded. Some called him reckless. Others called him noble. But one thing was clear: Zahir al-Mansur had just done something no one expected. Meanwhile, Emily watched the broadcast from her small apartment, tears streaming down her cheeks. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. He had defended her, publicly, passionately, risking his entire reputation for someone like her. Before she could think twice, she grabbed her purse and ran out the door. She arrived at the foundation breathless, finding him alone in his office, his tie undone, his phone buzzing non-stop with messages. He looked up when she entered. "You're supposed to be resting," he said quietly. "I saw what you did," she said, her voice trembling. "You didn't have to." "Yes, I did." He stood, walking toward her. "I've spent my life pretending strength meant control, but maybe real strength is standing beside someone when the world expects you to walk away." Emily blinked back tears. "You're going to lose a lot for this." "Then I'll lose it," he said softly. "But I won't lose my soul again." There was a long silence, the kind that said everything words couldn't. And as the desert wind rattled the windows of his glass tower, they both knew something had changed forever. Zahir wasn't the untouchable Sheikh anymore. He was a man, flawed, vulnerable, and finally free. And for the first time in her life, Emily Carter didn't feel small. She felt seen. The storm came faster than either of them expected. Within 24 hours of Zahir's press conference, the financial world was in uproar. News anchors debated his reckless, emotional outburst. Shareholders demanded answers. And powerful men, the kind who only smiled when there was profit, were now sharpening their knives. At Al-Mansur Holdings headquarters, the boardroom felt colder than usual. The men seated around the table wore immaculate suits, their expressions carved from disdain. At the head sat Zahir, his face unreadable. He had built this empire from the ground up, but now the very people he'd made rich were ready to tear him apart. "Your behavior," said one grey-haired board member, "was a disaster. You've made a spectacle of yourself in this company, defending a woman from the streets. What were you thinking?" Zahir's jaw tightened. "I was thinking like a human being." "This isn't about humanity," another interrupted. "It's about business. Investors are nervous. We've lost nearly 5% in market confidence overnight." Zahir leaned forward, his voice calm but firm. "If 5% of value is worth more to you than integrity, you're in the wrong room." A tense silence followed. One man dared to speak again. "You're acting like this woman matters more than your empire." Zahir looked him dead in the eye. "Maybe she does." The room fell still. No one dared to challenge him again. But he knew this wasn't over. The vultures were circling. That evening, Emily sat in her small office at the foundation, scrolling through messages that alternated between praise and venom. Heroine, some called her. Gold digger, others spat. The internet had decided she was either a saint or a scandal. There was no in-between. The door opened. Zahir stepped in, shoulders heavy with exhaustion. His tie hung loose, and his eyes, usually sharp as blades, looked clouded with worry. "They're coming after me," he said quietly. "They want me out of my own company." Emily stood, heart sinking. "Because of me?" "Because of the truth," he corrected. "They don't like that I've shown weakness." "You didn't show weakness," she said firmly. "You showed strength." He smiled faintly. "Then why does it feel like I'm losing everything?" She hesitated, then stepped closer. "Because for once, you're fighting for something real." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat the air between them shifted. There was no billionaire and employee, no scandal, no world watching. Just two people standing on the edge of something neither could name. But the world didn't stop spinning. That night, a news report aired, an anonymous source claiming Emily had manipulated Zahir for money. The story was filled with lies, fabricated documents, and one goal: destroy them both. Zahir's advisors urged him to issue a public statement distancing himself from her. "Deny it all," they said. "Save your reputation." Instead, he turned off his phone and drove through the city until he reached the foundation. Emily was still there, sorting supplies for an upcoming relief mission. Her sleeves rolled up, her face streaked with fatigue. He stood at the doorway for a long moment before speaking. "You should leave Dubai for a while." She looked up sharply. "What? They're attacking you. They'll make things worse. I can send you somewhere safe, Paris, London. I'm not running away," she said. "And I'm not ashamed. Emily, they will destroy you." "Then let them try," she said, her voice rising. "You think I've never been humiliated before? I grew up with nothing, Zahir. I know what it's like to be invisible. You gave me a voice, and I'm not giving it back just because they're scared of it." He stared at her, torn between frustration and admiration. "You're impossible," he muttered. "And you're used to getting your way," she shot back. He laughed despite himself. "You're going to ruin me," she smiled softly. Maybe you needed a little ruining. Something broke inside him, a dam that had held too long. He stepped closer until their faces were inches apart. "You have no idea what you're doing to me," he said quietly. Her breath caught. "Then maybe tell me." For a fleeting moment he almost did. But the sound of his phone vibrating shattered the moment. He answered reluctantly. A grim voice on the other end said, "They've called an emergency vote. Tomorrow morning, the board wants you out." He hung up, his expression hardening. "What is it?" Emily asked. "It's time to see who still stands with me." The next morning, Zahir walked into the boardroom as the sun rose over the desert skyline. Cameras had been banned. Only 12 men and women sat at the polished table, each holding the power to end his reign. The chairman cleared his throat. "We've reviewed your recent conduct. The vote will determine whether Sheikh Zahir al-Mansour remains CEO of al-Mansour Holdings." Zahir stood tall. "Before you vote," he said, "I have one thing to say." He looked each of them in the eye. "You've all spent your lives chasing numbers, titles, and approval. I've done the same. But last week I was reminded that the worth of a man isn't in his wealth. It's in what he's willing to lose for the truth." Murmurs rippled around the room. He continued, "If that truth costs me my position, so be it. I'll walk out with nothing before I sell my soul to keep your comfort intact." The chairman's expression softened for the first time. "You've changed, Zahir," he nodded. "Maybe for the better." The votes were cast. When the results came in, silence filled the room. 6 for his removal, 6 for him to stay, a tie. The chairman, holding the deciding vote, met Zahir's gaze. Then with a slow breath, he said, "I vote to keep him." Zahir's jaw clenched as relief flooded him. But it wasn't triumph he felt, it was peace. He left the room to find Emily waiting in the hallway. She didn't ask for the result. She just looked into his eyes and knew. "So," she said softly, "what now?" He smiled faintly. "Now, I stop living for them." He reached for her hand, hesitantly, as if afraid she might pull away. She didn't. And as they stood together, the city stretching endlessly beneath them, Zahir realized something profound. He hadn't saved her. She had saved him. The wind swept across the marble terrace of Zahir's penthouse, carrying the faint hum of the city below. He stood by the railing, staring into the night, his reflection shimmering faintly in the glass. Behind him, the empire he had fought to keep was still standing, but barely. The last few weeks had stripped away everything unnecessary, the illusions, the fear, the masks, and yet the silence that filled the room wasn't peace. It was the silence that comes before another storm. Emily entered quietly, her hair loose, her face pale but calm. She hesitated at the doorway before saying softly, "They won't stop, will they?" He turned to her, the glow from the city outlining his sharp features. "No," he said. "Men who build power on fear don't forgive those who choose love instead." Emily walked to his side, looking out over Dubai's skyline, the towers like silver spears piercing the night sky. "You stood up for me, Zahir. You stood up for what's right. If that's what they hate you for, then let them." He gave a quiet, sad smile. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple," she said. "You don't owe them your soul." He looked at her for a long time, his expression unreadable. "Emily, what if I told you that everything we've done, every risk, every fight, might not be enough? They're still moving behind the scenes. My cousin Khalid wants control of the company. He's already turned half the board against me." Her hand brushed his. "Then let him take it. Walk away before it destroys you." He laughed, but it wasn't joyful. "Walk away? You don't walk away from a legacy built by generations. You protect it. You protect people," she corrected gently. "Not legacies." He looked down at her, and for a moment his armor cracked. He reached out and touched her cheek, thumb grazing her skin, as if memorizing her. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" Emily's breath caught. "What do you mean?" "You made me see the world differently. You made me question everything I thought was unshakable. And now—" He stepped back, his voice breaking. "Now they'll use you to break me." Before she could answer, his phone rang. He ignored it once, twice, but on the third ring he answered. His assistant's voice was trembling. "Sir, you need to come to the office. It's urgent." "There's been a breach." Within an hour they were there, standing before a sea of shattered glass and chaos. Someone had broken into the Foundation's data center, leaking documents online. Bank records, personal messages, internal memos, all twisted to make it look like Zahir had embezzled charity funds to support Emily's salary and lifestyle. The headlines spread like wildfire. Sheikh's secret mistress funded by fake foundation. Charity. Money used for love affair. Al-Mansour legacy stained. By morning, everything he had built was collapsing again. The press surrounded the gates of his mansion. Former allies refused to take his calls. And Khalid, the cousin who had smiled at him for years, finally showed his true face. He arrived at Zahir's home, wearing a perfect smile. "I told you this would happen," he said smoothly. "You can still fix it, cousin. Step down quietly, hand over control, and disappear. Dubai will forgive you eventually." Zahir stared at him in silence, the muscles in his jaw tightening. "You're behind this." Khalid's smile didn't fade. "I'm just restoring order. You've turned my life into a battlefield." "No," Khalid said. "She did." Zahir moved before he even realized it, his hand gripping Khalid's collar, pulling him close. "Say her name again," he growled. Khalid's smirk wavered. "You'll lose everything for her, Zahir. And when you do, she'll leave you." "They all do." Zahir shoved him away. "Get out." When the door slammed behind him, Emily stepped out from the hallway, her eyes wide. She had heard everything. "I'm the reason this is happening," she said quietly. "No," Zahir said immediately. "You're the reason I finally see." She shook her head. "Zahir, listen to me. Let him have it. Let it all go before you lose yourself." He turned to face her. "I already lost myself before I met you. You gave me back what mattered. I won't let them twist that into shame." The next day, Zahir did something unthinkable. He called a press conference, again. This time, it wasn't in a polished boardroom or under golden chandeliers. It was outside, in the open courtyard of the Foundation, with the desert wind sweeping dust across the stage. Reporters gathered like wolves, their cameras flashing. Emily watched from the edge, her heart pounding. Zahir stepped up to the microphone, his voice steady but heavy with truth. "Months ago," he began, "I fired a woman named Emily Carter. I believed she was beneath me. I was wrong. She showed me what real strength looks like. Not power, not wealth, but compassion. Because of her, I saw what my money had blinded me to for years. Humanity," the crowd murmured. He continued, eyes fierce. "They say I used this foundation for personal gain. They say she corrupted me. The truth is the opposite. She saved me. And if that means I lose my title, my company, or my empire, then so be it." Gasps rippled through the audience. Emily's eyes filled with tears. Zahir took a breath. "Power is not about owning others. It's about serving them. If that makes me unfit to lead, then maybe this world needs fewer leaders and more servants." He stepped back. The crowd erupted in questions, flashes, noise, but he didn't care. The truth was out. Hours later, as the sun set over the horizon, Emily found him standing alone on the balcony of the Foundation, watching the city turn gold. "They'll never forget that speech," she said softly. "Good," he murmured. "Then maybe it meant something." She smiled faintly. "You lost everything." He turned to her. "No, I found you." The simplicity of it silenced her. As the wind swept through, he reached for her hand. No hesitation this time. "Come with me," he said. "No bodyguards, no reporters, just us. Wherever the world still feels real." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes full of all the pain and beauty they had endured together. Then she nodded. They walked away from the city lights, from the empire, from the noise, from everything that had defined him, and for the first time in his life, Sheikh Zahir al-Mansur was free.